This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill.
Do not be afraid. We are now in control of what you hear.
1, 2, 3, testing.
A journey to the far reaches of knowledge and the unknown.
I can't believe I just saw that.
From aliens to angels, conspiracies to cover-ups.
One soul and preeminent power.
From extraterrestrials to exposing the truth.
I'll try to explain as much as I can.
You're listening to Planet X.
You're listening to Planet X.
Planet X.
This is Breaking the Matrix. I am Tony Topping.
This is Planet X. Planet X. The radio show that officially does not exist. This is Planet X. Planet X.
A drug-fueled orgy at a Masonic lodge found women dancing naked on stage and men filming sex acts. Police in Michigan have broken up a shocking drug-fueled orgy being hosted at a secretive Masonic lodge, and this wasn't the first time it has happened, authorities warn. Officers were called to the prominent building in downtown Battle Creek, Michigan, which sits across a park from police headquarters, about 2:15 a.m. Sunday. They found 5 women dancing on stage naked. They also reportedly discovered a couple having sex in the lodge and several men standing around filming the action. WMT-TV reports that authorities believe the Masonic Lodge, which is home of the secret society called Freemasons, has been used for such activities before and are working to shut the operation down. Police sources told WMT that officers found a drug-fueled sex party in the building and sent the revelers home. The Battle Creek Freemasons refused to comment on camera for the TV station, but insisted that the orgy was not part of the secret society's rituals. They said the party was not sponsored by their group at all.
Get in touch with Planet X. Call, text, email. Find us on Facebook.
Louis Moore hates him. The site henrymacau.com provided an interesting article dated June the 25th, 2013, asking Snowden, does he polarise with patriots and prostitutes? Does he polarise the debate? He has ignited a furious debate on who are the real traitors, the whistleblowers or politicians and media prostitutes who condemn him, and do the Illuminati benefit from Snowden's revelations? When Dick Cheney called Edward Snowden a traitor, Snowden replied that it was an honour to be called a traitor by Cheney. The dispute is teaching people that, with some exceptions, the political class has sold its soul to the Illuminati central bankers. The bankers need a world police state to protect their fraudulent credit monopoly and collect on their fictitious debt, and those whores are happy to take their cut, according to Macau. The Snowden NSA spying story has polarised patriots and prostitutes. Henry Macau continues. NBC Madam David Gregory asked Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian why he wasn't a criminal for enabling Edward Snowden. Andy Borowitz wonders if the US government can't see the irony of charging Snowden with spying. A White House petition to pardon Snowden is approaching the 200,000 signature threshold. Obama's popularity has dropped 10% as young supporters recognise that he is a mannequin. Obama said, "If you can't trust your government, then we have a problem." Julian Assange called Obama the real traitor for betraying the hope of a generation of idealists represented by both Bradley Manning and Edward Snowden. Nancy Pelosi was booed by her progressive supporters for saying Snowden broke the law. Polarization between patriots and prostitutes will only increase. Hopefully the knowledge that society has been subverted by an alien, occult, Kabbalist financial power will unite right and left. Hopefully, they will recognise that the US government is initiating terror like 9/11 as a pretext to grab guns and suspend civil rights. Hopefully, left and right will recognise the common enemy is the central banker and their minions. Both Snowden and Greenwald are eloquent spokesmen for freedom. "This is not the kind of country I want to live in," Snowden said. Greenwald is defending his source courageously and effectively. "I believe they are sincere." Henry Macau further comments, do Snowden's revelations serve the Illuminati agenda, and if so, how? The tell is the publicity, especially in The Guardian and other Rothschild house organs like Democracy Now! There have been many leaks about NSA spying over the years. Why did this one get so much attention? The Illuminati bankers work both sides against the middle. Daniel Ellsberg left is a good example. The bankers got the US into Vietnam and then they attacked US policy, while Ellsberg leaked the Pentagon Papers to the New York Times. The Illuminati purpose? Degrade and discredit the US and alienate youth from their governments. Snowden's unwitting role is to increase alienation, division and polarization in US society as in the 1960s. In other words, they have turned up the heat. Think cooking frogs in a pot. Snowden is a revelation of the method. Big Brother is now official. The masses, in their media-induced stupor, have acquiesced. We've been living in a police state all along, and it hasn't been so bad. The patriots on the left and right have now acquiesced. Visits to conspiracy sites like mine have spiked. The prostitutes have rushed to the government's defence. The battle lines have been drawn. I think the hidden agenda, writes Macau of the Snowden revelations, is to convince people that resistance is futile. We're watching you. Webster Tapley is scathing in his criticism of Snowden and Greenwald. If Snowden were for real, Tapley says, he would have divulged information we didn't already know, like the US role in Syria. He thinks Snowden is a diversion. Apart from a few obvious exaggerations and rhetorical flourishes, Greenwald and Snowden have thus managed to add virtually nothing to our awareness of institutionalized electronic eavesdropping. But the media circus they helped to create emerges in a sinister light when we realize that it was offered as a diversion of world public opinion from the really urgent question on the world historical agenda. Would the British, the French, the Israelis and the neocons be able to push the reluctant and vacillating Obama into the thankless role of leading a token NATO coalition in an attack on Syria, Hezbollah and perhaps Iran? Tapley asked the question. In response, Macau says that he doesn't buy Tapley's argument. I can't believe Obama makes any important decisions. A friend advanced the theory that the real object is to criminalise everything. The agenda here is subtle, says Henry's friend. It's not about spying on anti-government activists, that's way too easy, and the covert means are already there. This is about maintaining the prison industrial fear complex. We have thousands of laws in this country with which the government uses to maintain the prison state. Laws against possession of marijuana, prescription drugs, hiding gifts from the IRS, prostitution, etc., etc. Not that these are good things, but a very, very large portion of the population, maybe 99%, has engaged in something or another in their lives. Once they get reworded, like marijuana possession is now part of terrorism because of the brutal drug laws, it becomes fair game. The thing is, the Fourth Amendment was a blanket protection against unreasonable prosecution for small shit, because getting the dirt on someone was held to a very high bar. Well, that's the real goal. These things will be used eventually to prosecute small crimes. The real goal is having the public completely okay with having all of your data, emails, phone calls, used for whatever law enforcement purposes. The real enemy is not the snooping, it's the ridiculous laws criminalising everything. A variation on this theme is that now everyone is vulnerable to blackmail. There is a book called The book called A Giant Blackmailing Machine by Thom Bogart, and this is how the Illuminati control their agents. Maybe this is also the way they'll control the plebs, according to Henry Markow. Finally, mass surveillance is the hallmark of a police state and cannot be tolerated. The purpose of surveillance is to identify and persecute or even liquidate people who oppose some aspect of the New World Order. It has nothing to do with terrorism, which is state-sponsored. Surveillance has a mortifying effect on free speech and all political activity. It makes a farce of American claims to be a free country and champion of democracy. See also Dennis Liu's A Tutorial on Government Repression, Spying and Resistance. In conclusion, the Illuminati goal is to degrade and demoralize the human race and induct it into their satanic cult as their servant and bumboy. Our children are being groomed for homosexuality in public schools and the media. The bankers have decided to turn up the heat by making their surveillance better known. Hopefully this will backfire and they will be burned as the public realizes that it isn't left against right, it's patriots versus prostitutes.
This is Planet X. Planet X.
of interest to listeners of Breaking the Matrix is an article from the excellent site Vigilant Citizen. Although this is dated May the 9th, 2013, the comments are very interesting regarding the singer Lauryn Hill, who was ordered by the court to undergo counselling due to her conspiracy theories. The name of Lauryn Hill's breakout album was The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, but it now appears that the powers that be would like her to record a new album called The Re-Education of Lauryn Hill. After appearing in court for tax evasion, Hill was sentenced to 3 months in jail, plus she must attend counselling due to her conspiracy theories. According to the International Business Times, Hill told the court, "I am a child of former slaves who had a system imposed on them. I had an economic system imposed on me." Furthermore, Hill also believes that artists are being oppressed by what the article calls a plot involving the military and media. Because of these statements, Hill was ordered to undergo counselling, which is a way of saying that she is mentally ill and that she needs some sort of reprogramming session to regain her sanity, according to Vigilant Citizen. In 2012, Hill published a thoughtful letter describing the corruption, the oppression, and the control of the music industry and her desire to escape it. In one part of the letter, Lauryn states, "It was this schism and the hypocrisy, violence, and social cannibalism it enabled that I wanted and needed to be freed from. Not from art or music, but the suppression/repression and reduction of that art and music to a bottom line, alone, without regard for anything else. Over-commercialization and its resulting restrictions and limitations can be very damaging and distorting to the inherent nature of the individual. I love making art, I love making music. These are as natural and necessary for me almost as breathing or talking. To be denied the right to pursue it according to my ability, as well as be properly acknowledged and compensated for it in an attempt to control, is manipulation directed at my most basic rights. These forms of expression, along with others, effectively comprise my free speech. Defending, preserving and protecting these rights are critically important, especially in a paradigm where veiled racism, sexism, ageism, nepotism and deliberate economic control are still blatant realities." Despite what mainstream media reports, Hill is not mumbling incoherent conspiracy theories, but is rather speaking the truth. Her statements are a result of her first-hand experience within the industry and her desire to not be a part of its madness. Hill's theories are simply an intelligent person's clear analysis of a situation, says Vigilant Citizen. However, as American society turns into a real-life version of the novel of 1984, speaking the truth is increasingly considered to be a mental illness, one that needs to be treated and fixed. Does free speech still exist if saying the wrong word leads to a mandatory visit to a mind doctor? I'll just let Lauryn sing the final words. And I'm certainly not going to sing for you.
Planet X. Strange goings on.
For as long as Assad is able to defy international will and get away with chemical attacks on his people, I believe he will feel little, if any, pressure to come to the negotiating table. He is happy going on killing, maiming his own people as part of his strategy for winning that brutal civil war.
It's interesting to note, as always with all these things, that you have to have a balance when you're studying all this. You really do. You will note, as I've said on the Tony Topping show, that the intelligence services of these countries, well, not even the intelligence services, their media, like, for example, Russia, China, Iran, etc., it's all geared, when you read their media, as some people in the Truth Movement have pointed out, it's all geared towards anti-Western goings-on. While at the same time their own human rights abuses and what they get up to is completely neglected. And this is an imbalance, especially with the broadcaster Russia Today. There's a bit of an imbalance going on there. And if we are to live in a world of peace, and if we are to realise what we as human beings is all about, I think we've got to learn that they're all as bad as each other. And that is what I've concluded. They're all as bad as each other. And this article gives some very interesting insights as to the Syrian chemical weapons sales, labelling them really all as bad as each other. Because when Syria lost its main ally, Egypt, to Israel in a 1979 peace deal, the Alawite-controlled government in Damascus set out to regain its military edge by establishing a secret chemical weapons program that required the involvement of Western companies, whether they knew it or not. So says an article in the International Business Times by David Kashee. Wednesday's report by Syrian opposition groups that the Syrian military had used chemical weapons to kill 1,300 civilians outside Damascus, coupled with comparatively less horrific episodes earlier this year, indicates that the Assad regime has a large stockpile of deadly chemical weapons. And now, as the world reels in revulsion, the question presents itself: how exactly did that come about? The story starts after the Yom Kippur War, when Syria realised it needed to strengthen its military capabilities, especially after losing its alliance with Egypt in the 1979 peace agreement. Syria came up with a plan called Strategic Parity, which sought to develop defensive and offensive capabilities to counter Israel's nuclear weapons program. According to a research publication by Danny Shoham, a chemical and biological expert at the Bingin al-Sadat Center for Strategic Studies in Arbal Ilan University in Israel, the irony is, of course, that the Syrian government choose to use its chemical weapons not against its intended enemy Israel, but against its own people. One of the ways the Syrian government was able to keep its chemical weapons program undetected for so long was through the establishment of its Scientific Studies and Research Centre, SSRC. Ostensibly a civilian agency set up in 1969, this science research agency acted as a front for a secret chemical weapons program in conjunction with the military, according to Shoham. Interestingly enough, in 1972, Egypt supplied Syria with weaponized chemical weapons, whether that be mustard and sarin or mustard only. And many Western companies have since contributed to the Syrian weapons program by selling precursor nerve agents to SSRC front companies as far back as 1989. Then CIA Director William Webster said West European firms were instrumental in supplying the required precursor chemicals and equipment. Without these provision of these key elements, Damascus would not have been able to produce chemical weapons. In the early 1980s, the SSRC set up its first chemical munitions facility called the borosilicate glass project. It was equipped by Germany's Schott Corporation, one of the largest industrial glass manufacturers, which helped produce materials used by the Syrians for their weapons program. On September the 15th, 1983, a national intelligence estimate noted that Syria was meanwhile a major recipient of Soviet chemical weapons assistance, and that the country probably had the most advanced chemical warfare capability in the Arab world. In 1992, a Damascus-based company, Sedma, under the auspices of the SSRC, received a 45-ton shipment of trimethyl phosphate, a precursor to nerve gas from a company in India. According to information provided by the Nuclear Threat Initiative, a non-profit organisation with a mission to strengthen global security, a year later, Syria received at least 800 kilograms of raw materials for the production of an updated version of VX, a deadly nerve agent. It was sold to the Syrians by Anatoly Kundzesyev, an advisor to Russian President Boris Yeltsin, on chemical disarmament and commander of the Russian Military Academy for Chemical Warfare. Another German company, Sigri, which specialised in Teflon coatings for instruments in the chemical field, provided critical equipment for the Syrian weapons program in the 1990s, and British-based M.W. Kellogg set up plans for the manufacture of ammonia and urea, both used in chemical weapons in Syria and Iran, Shoham detailed. Even French scientific institutes played a role through their relationship with the SSRC, providing information regarding storehouses for biological and chemical weapons. The most recent supplier to Syria chemical weapons program is North Korea. Besides providing the Syrian regime the means to construct a nuclear reactor, which Israel had destroyed in 2007, North Korea also has transfer technology for producing chemical warheads, selling after-sales services, according to the South Korean news agency Chizun Albu. Quoting a diplomatic source, in 2009, 4 shipping containers headed for Syria from North Korea were discovered containing 13,000 protective coats, and a 2012 report by the UN regarding the seizure said that the coats were reported to have military use for chemical protection. In addition to 23,600 gas indicators used to detect chemical substances were found. Recent uses of chemical weapons reported by opposition forces have shown that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is willing to use these unconventional weapons even after the recent arrival of UN chemical experts in the war-torn country. Jeff White, a defence fellow at the Washington Institute, a DC-based think tank, said Syria probably used chemical weapons in the outskirts of Damascus because the regime forces have had great difficulty breaking rebel resistance in those areas. Safe, come here, shouts the soldier. No, you come here, you'll be safe. Where are you from? I'm one of your own. Where are you from? I'm one of you, I'm Syrian. Which part of Syria? From our country. You're my brother. From wherever you're from, you're my brother. Look, I'm putting down my rifle. Come over here, we assure your safety. I swear to God you'll be safe. The clip you've just heard is from the website or the YouTube channel Syrian Partisan Girl. It's a very interesting clip. And what is happening is when you go there, you will see a soldier talking to Syrian FSA. He's a Syrian soldier. He's an officer. He's walked across the street. He's put down his Kalashnikov and he's entered into dialogue with the Syrian freedom fighters. All sorts of questions are asked of the soldier. The soldier says he comes in peace. He doesn't wish to destroy. The men around him are very edgy. The soldiers are very edgy and the freedom fighters are very edgy. But the local commander of the Free Syrian Army office speaks to him in the middle of the street, asking why 50 women were taken prisoner. He has no explanation. The soldier has no explanation for this. Not only that, but further questions are asked as to who the soldier is. The soldier said he studied engineering. It was the people's money that paid for this. And the questions go on. Tensions are heightened with the Syrian freedom fighters who want to shoot him. And the dialogue continues. He reckons, the soldier indicates that there is only one, it only takes one bastard minister and somebody else to ruin everything for us. He said that he'd sheltered some refugees. He didn't want rent in his house, so said the soldier. And according to Syrian Partisan Girl's channel, this soldier was later shot, not by the men he was talking to, but by the actual individuals in the middle of battle. It's a beautiful clip of dialogue outside of the mainstream media. The mainstream media aren't showing it, and it is actually an amazing clip. I'm going to give you the link, and the link can be seen at Tiny, that's Tiny, http tinyurl.com p38l, that's lowercase l7rt, p38 lowercase l7rt, and it is there you will find this astounding clip of a Syrian soldier having a dialogue with FSA in the middle of a firefight. It's Syrian Girl Partisan. Interestingly enough, somebody writes on the YouTube channel that it brought tears to their eyes. If only this war was in the hands of Syrians alone, we could have been done with it long ago, and thousands of beautiful lives could have been spared. Shame on the propaganda, lies and greed that have defined this war. Shame on ourselves, shame on humanity. We should be better than this. Another person commented on the clip that it was an amazing scene. Instead of the horse shit I'm being fed here in Sweden, I actually get to see some real human interaction in this war. Thank you for this video. It gave me strength. And as you can see, it's an astounding clip. It nearly brought me to tears seeing these men talking to each other in the middle of a battlefield. It's absolutely unbelievable.
I am saying this is a judgment. We all have to reach a judgment about what happened and who was responsible. But I would put it to you that from all the evidence we have, the fact that opposition don't have chemical weapons, the fact the regime do, the fact they've used it, the fact they were attacking the area at the time, and that intelligence I've reported, that is enough to conclude that the regime is responsible and should be held accountable.
Blood Money UK's £12.3 billion arms sales to repressive states. The government approved thousands of deals with states it condemns for human rights abuses, according to The Independent. The government has issued more than 3,000 export licenses for military and intelligence equipment worth a total of £12.3 billion to countries which are on its own official list for human rights abuses. The existence of one licence to Israel and the occupied territories had not been made public until today. Worth £7.7 billion, it relates to cryptographic equipment which has dual defence and civilian use. The scale and detail of the details emerged after a forensic investigation by a committee of MPs who also discovered that strategically controlled items have been sent to Iran, China, Sri Lanka, Russia, Belarus and Zimbabwe, all of which feature prominently on the Foreign Office list of states with worrying civil rights records. There are even 3 existing contracts for Syria, notwithstanding the fact that the UK is sending equipment to rebels fighting the Assad regime and is considering arming them. There are also 57 for Argentina, which is not on the list, but which remains in confrontation with Britain over the Falklands. The government has stated that it will not issue export licences for goods which might be used to facilitate internal repression or might provoke or prolong regional or internal conflicts. However, the report by the Committee on Arms Export Controls found there were 62 licences for selling to Iran, again overwhelmingly cryptographic equipment. This also features heavily in the 271 licences for Russia, along with biotechnology equipment, sniper rifles, laser weapon systems, weapon sights and unmanned air vehicles, drones. Both countries have been involved in large-scale supplies of weaponry to President Assad, and members of Iran's Revolutionary Guards have been on the ground supporting regime forces in Syria. The committee points out that the contracts should be examined both on grounds of internal oppression and prolonging regional conflicts. The Syrian licenses are for components for four-wheel drive vehicles with ballistic protection, which is believed to have been for an aid organisation. Ha 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 ha. But there are also hydrophone arrays which can be used to listen underwater. The report points out that the latter have a dual use, and the government needs to confirm that it is not breaking international sanctions against Syria. Yesterday, William Hague, the Foreign Secretary, announced that HUDs offering protection against chemical weapons would be sent to the Syrian rebels. There have been persistent reports of the regime using sarin nerve gas. The suppliers to China have the largest number of licenses, with 1,163 worth 1.8 billion, as well as cryptographic equipment. This includes direct military communications equipment, body armour and weapon sights. So well done there for British industry. The committee urged the government to examine whether this infringes the EU's arms embargo on Beijing, and whether it should in fact seek to expand the embargo to include all military goods. On Argentina, the report is not only critical of the existing contracts, which consist mainly of cryptographic components, small arms ammunition and lasers, but the failure to press allies not to supply Buenos Aires with arms. It states the committee concluded that it is reprehensible that the government, given the relatively recent history of British ships being sunk in the Falklands War by missiles supplied by a NATO member, French exocets, is unwilling to lobby other governments. The MPs noted that the Argentine foreign minister recently stated, "I don't think it will take another 20 years to retake the islands." Only 2 states on 27 on the Foreign Office's human rights list, North Korea and South Sudan, did not have licences to their names. Among the others, Saudi Arabia has 417 licences with a value of 1.8 billion, Pakistan 219 worth almost 50 million, Sri Lanka 49 at 8 million, and Zimbabwe 46 worth just under 3 million. Sir John Stanley, the chairman of the committee and a former defence minister, said he had decided to carry out the inquiry into arms licences after the Foreign Office began to publish its human rights reports. He added, "When I first wrote to Vince Cable, the business secretary, I had no idea that the figures involved would be so large. I thought someone may have added some zeros by mistake. 12 billion is an absolutely huge sum. I asked Vince Cable to confirm they were accurate, and apart from a small adjustment for Iran, they all were."
Planet X. The truth is on air.
I can also highly recommend to listeners of Breaking the Matrix, and we're going to have these guests on in the next episodes ahead, because we're going to really be looking at the areas of financial conspiracy and what goes on there. The very interesting blog called youngmoneyblog.co.uk, and the excellent articles written by Iona Young. She's featured on the Max Kaiser programme quite a lot, and she raises some interesting questions regarding what I'm sure listeners will find to be very disturbing, as I do. Only the other day I was looking on TV, and there is a thing where you will eventually, if you borrow £400, pay about £5,000 in interest. £5,000 after borrowing 400. This extortion, the government is to blame. The government is entirely to blame for lobbying private payday loan companies, and this extortion this government is to currently blame for. I hold it fairly and squarely at their doorstep. And this is interesting in this article, asking if the short-term credit market reached a new low with loans for poor people. Online companies and brokers are using tawdry tactics to try and attract vulnerable customers. What can we do to make sure this doesn't have terrible consequences? Asks Iona. New rules were ushered in this year to ensure that the term independent financial advisor can only be used to describe someone with top qualifications and the ability to recommend all kinds of products to consumers. But what happens if we chop off the word independent? Well, just about anybody can pass themselves off as a financial advisor, even promoters of quick fix loans that could do more harm than good. I've come across a site called Loans for Poor People, which recently appeared on a forum for real financial advisors, writes Iona. The individual behind this firm calls himself a financial advisor on LinkedIn and various blogging sites. It is not a joke, as far as I know, even though the website absurdly states that it is designed for the deprived. I've never come across a more dehumanizing name for financial services outfit other than Loans for Poor People, writes Iona. What's more, the Office of Fair Trading recently raised alarm bells over the damaging slogans used by the short-term loan sector, such as no credit checks and get cash ASAP. I've seen some of this flippant language used by firms like LFPP on forums and have reported my concerns to the watchdog. It is now looking into my complaint and assures me it is taking it very seriously, given that this firm does not appear to show up on its public register, written according to Iona. Stuart Carmichael at the Debt Support Trust agreed that this company's title was exploitative. He said, "I was amazed to see the company is promoting loans for people in an IVA and bankruptcy. I'm not sure whether the people behind this are foolish and targeting the deprived, or unethical and are aware of the error they are making. As an intermediary, they will get paid when people take a loan from another company. Most people in a deprived situation will do anything for credit, so this company probably feel that they can maximize their profits by targeting people in a desperate situation." The title suggests that people who are in a vulnerable position should self-identify as poor or deprived, and that the magical cure all for that desperate predicament is simply the right loan at the right interest rate. If such people really are in need of help, says Iona, surely an ethical and responsible financial advisor would seek to lay out all their options, including debt advice charities and the Citizens Advice Bureau. It is not clear whether an applicant for a loan on the site would receive such information. Church Action on Poverty, a Christian social justice company in the UK, released a report earlier this year which highlighted the stigmatic terms attached to people in financial difficulty, and rightly argued that they deserved more compassion and better understanding. Firms like LFPP are trying their utmost to promote products which may be totally unsuitable for many consumers under the auspices of financial advice. Thankfully, they will not always succeed, as many savvy consumers will not fall for it. But history tells us that the public is not necessarily alive to false marketing, mis-selling and poor advice. Far from it. And the number of young people who are going online for financial information cannot be underestimated, and it is a recipe for disaster. Iona states LFPP says it is neither a broker nor a lender. Instead, it matches poor customers to the most suitable loans on the market for apparently no fees. Mr. Carmichael said that the firm is likely to be paid a commission every time it refers somebody to their service, but it is a mystery as to which third-party firms obtain your details from this matching service, whether they would be adequately regulated, and what kind of costs will be involved during the process. After all, the terms and condition page simply links to a different website where you can apply for a loan instantly. Of course, it's hard to see what the regulators could do about the uncontrollable jungle that is the internet, but if you have doubts about a firm, you can call the OFT Consumer Helpline. You can also search its public registry to see if a firm has a consumer credit license. You can report firms on social media sites who use demeaning terms to describe certain sections of society. You are by no means powerless, and that is correct. Iona's written a very good article there. You are by no means powerless. The law is in fact on your side, and it's knowing what to do, and you must not ever, ever decide, if you are in any form of debt, to put the car exhaust into the back seat of the car and do yourself in. Do not be intimidated by these people. Stand your ground with them. Know your rights. Knowledge on this issue is very important, because ignorance is no defence, and so you need to know your rights. Debt collection agencies do not have any powers at all. They cannot turn up on your doorstep and demand things. That cannot be done at all, and you can serve them. There are templates to download on the internet to do with something called tort of trespass. If you have a look under Freeman on the Land and common law, there are lots of ways to deal with this situation, and so it's important that you don't get into a tiz over it.
From extraterrestrials to exposing the truth, this is Planet X.
In my quest in breaking the matrix to find interesting articles for you to look at and digest, there is one website that I find absolutely fascinating to read, and that is the UK column. And currently there's some very interesting things that I'd like to share with you, although this was some time back, and it was the Bradbury pound. And what this is about, if you look it up on UK column, you will find there will be an ebook available discussing the Bradbury pound. Very interesting indeed that they had a response from the Treasury Select Committee, more or less saying, go away, we're too busy, we're looking at other things that will cause the problem, because they know the game, of course they do. And as they've said on the UK column blog, that while politicians, economists and corporate media commentators continue to make a living justifying the continuing status quo of bailout and austerity, which is bringing hell on us all, we at the UK column continue to push for the combination of national credit, Glass-Steagall, banks in administration and an infrastructure rebuilding programme used as a driver for the real economy. Here, bloody here, I say. The continuing economic pessimism being foisted upon us is not only unnecessary, it is a criminal fraud for which the perpetrators need to be brought to justice. Until we can persuade the wider public of that, we simply have no future. If we are to bring these issues to a wider public, we need your help. So today we are making available our ebook, The Issue of National Credit. You can download the ebook as a PDF and as an iBook for the iPad. The iPad version includes video and audio, so it is a large file. So please read it, tweet about it, post it to Facebook and distribute it in any other way that comes to mind as widely as possible. The economic collapse, which will bring disaster to us all if left alone, is also our greatest opportunity to build a fantastic future if we have the guts to pursue it. Very true indeed. And there are some interesting comments from this regarding somebody called Captain Henry Kirby, a member of Parliament for Arundel and Shoreham in West Sussex. He prepared a motion that was presented before the House, what was known as an early day motion, to the wish of millions. It was never actually debated. To the wish of millions, should I say, they wanted this motion passing, but it was never actually debated. Thus the motion sadly does not appear in Hansard, can however be viewed in items relating to early day motion records, and here it is. That this House considers that the continued issue of all the means of exchange, be they coin, banknotes or credit, largely passed on by cheques by private firms as an interest-bearing debt against the public, should cease forthwith. That the sovereign power and duty of issuing money in all forms should be returned to the Crown, then to be put into circulation free of all debt and interest obligations, as a public service, not a private opportunity of profit and control for no tangible returns to the British people. And that the volume of money be controlled so as to maintain stable prices. That the nationalisation of the Bank of England did nothing to solve this problem, as the bank only serves a subsidiary purpose, and almost all money is still created out of nothing by mere book entry by private banks. That the aims of those who want to assure private property and free enterprise, as well as those who want to protect the British people from unfair exploitation, would both be best served by restoring the power of issuing money to Her Majesty the Queen, in accordance with ancient tradition and law, as is also demanded by the American Constitution, which gives the right of issue solely to Congress, so as to assure the state and nation the benefits of that emission and relieve them of the immense and growing burdens of parasitical national and private debt, and to make certain that control passes to the taxed and is taken out of the hands of the present, hidden and unlawful beneficiaries of taxation, much of the proceeds of which they collect as interest on all money and immense debts. And therefore this House calls upon Her Majesty's Government to introduce the required legislation to assert the proper sovereignty of the Queen in Council in this most important of all sovereign functions, to assure unprecedented prosperity with true sovereignty and liberty. Well said.
Planet X. The truth is on air.
Taking you beyond the frontiers of high strangeness, at St Anne's-on-Sea, at the Community Centre, St Albans Road, on the 21st of September 2013, a psychic remote viewing workshop. By popular request, a one-day course on psychic remote viewing based on the techniques of the spy agencies of the Cold War is presented for you. Participants conduct an actual target session and deeply explore the techniques pioneered by the major players in remote viewing. The day includes looking at that rare information pioneered by Russian remote viewers in understanding the cosmos. Tony Topping has nearly 30 years of knowledge in dealing with UFOs and psychic espionage. He has appeared for major broadcasters from ITV to Channel 5 News. And adding further fascination to events, our special guest will be taking attendees into the fascinating world of the human aura and first steps into stereo viewing, which peers into the spiritual realm of the self using photographic technology. All attendees will receive a CD-ROM of information packed with documents on remote viewing and aura research. It's unbeatable value at a cost of £30, including refreshments. Concessions for low incomes are available. Just email Tony, opsufo@hotmail.com. Tickets are available from psychicrvevent.eventbrite.co.uk. That is psychicrvevent.eventbrite, the word bright, spelt BRITE.co.uk. Come and join us for a fantastic day. A very interesting article has been spotted by Breaking the Matrix from Business Insider regarding the President Obama speech that was in the Rose Garden that was recently delivered, where the United States should strike Syria following a deadly chemical weapons attack. Oddly enough, I do note that George Bush Jr. didn't bother when the Kurds were being gassed, but that's another story. Seems to be that there's one standard for one and one standard for another. The hypocrisy stinks. But here we are looking now at comments by Justine Amash on an article for Business Insider, a Republican for Michigan, who took to Twitter to dispute the claim with comments from those who would like to carry out that order to attack Syria. He said, "I've been hearing a lot from members of our armed forces," Amash tweeted. "The message I consistently hear, please vote no on military action against Syria. Now that Obama has deferred to congressional debate, a vote on striking Syria would likely come up on the week of September the 9th. The president probably has the support of the Senate, but the vote could have some trouble in the House, as Josh Barrow points out." Since Amash's initial tweet, he's been retweeting comments that have been sent in from military members and veterans. Many of my own military sources have expressed reservations with action in Syria, especially following service in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Here's a sampling of some of these. I won't mention the names of the people involved on Twitter that are tweeting him. One says, 13-year USAF vet here, thanks for actually appreciating our Constitution. Vote no to actions in Syria. Another former Army Ranger, 2 tours in Iraq, 1 tour in Afghanistan. Please vote no on military action in Syria. Army veteran here, paratrooper, 20 years, 2 times in Iraq. Vote no, please, sir. No more nation-building chicanery. Nation-building chicanery. What an apt remark that is. Former Marine, not in your district. Vote no, please, and thank you. Navy vet here, 9 years. I know you will vote no, thank you. And so it continues. And looking at David Icke's headlines website, there's some interesting people in uniform, in military uniform, one in a Navy uniform, who's covered his face to say, "I didn't join the Navy to fight for Al-Qaeda in a Syrian civil war." Another one says, "I did not join the military to get involved in other countries' civil wars. Stay out of Syria." I will not fight for Al-Qaeda in Syria. Obama, says another veteran, I will not deploy to fight for your Al-Qaeda rebels in Syria. Wake up, people. Seems that Al-Qaeda is good for one thing and good for another when it suits the agenda. That's all we've got time for on Breaking the Matrix this week. Thank you very much for listening. We promise to have some great guests coming, including the MP George Galloway, who will be popping on to discuss a new and exciting project that he is currently dealing with. That's all, and good night. I'm Tony Topping. My email is tonyopsufo@hotmail.com. I'm off down the Lamb and Flag for a good beer. The news is in that Planet X is sounding better than ever before, but don't take my word for it, listeners. Starting at Sunday 8 p.m, The Truth is on air with Planet X and Neil Atkinson, going where other shows dare not go. And the great thing about Planet X, listeners, is that we are not tied to advertisers by any commercial means. We can say what we want, and we're sounding better than ever. The Tony Topping Show, my own show, is Tuesday at 8 p.m. Catch the Ben Emlyn Jones Show, Wednesday at 8 p.m. A New World Order investigator and has seen corruption firsthand in the NHS. He's not one to miss at all. The unbeatable Darren Perks Show, Thursday 8 p.m. UFO researcher Darren, absolutely top-notch with his research, often seen in the UK media. And of course my show, Tuesday 8 p.m, The Tony Topping Show, takes you into a journey deeply into the world of high strange, into areas we have not gone before, perhaps on any other paranormal radio show, coupled with my 30 years experience in the world of high strangeness. It's Planet X, it's unbeatable stuff. Listeners, this is absolutely fantastic.
X marks the
Drug-fueled orgy being hosted at a secretive Masonic lodge, and this wasn't the first time it has happened, authorities warn. Officers were called to the prominent building in downtown Battle Creek, Michigan, which sits across a park from police headquarters, about 2:15 a.m. Sunday. They found 5 women dancing on stage naked. They also reportedly discovered a couple having sex in the lodge and several men standing around filming the action. WMT-TV reports that authorities believe the Masonic Lodge, which is home of the secret society called Freemasons, has been used for such activities before and are working to shut the operation down. Police sources told WMT that officers found a drug-fueled sex party in the building and sent the revellers home. The Battle Creek Freemasons refused to comment on camera for the TV station, but insisted that the orgy was not part of the secret society's rituals. They said the party was not sponsored by their group at all.
Get in touch with Planet X. Call, text, email. Find us on Facebook.
Louis Moore hates him. The site henrymacow.com provided an interesting article dated June the 25th, 2013, asking Snowden, does he polarise with patriots and prostitutes? Does he polarise the debate? He has ignited a furious debate on who are the real traitors, the whistleblowers or politicians and media prostitutes who condemn him, and do the Illuminati benefit from Snowden's revelations? When Dick Cheney called Edward Snowden a traitor, Snowden replied that it was an honour to be called a traitor by Cheney. The dispute is teaching people that, with some exceptions, the political class has sold its soul to the Illuminati central bankers. The bankers need a world police state to protect their fraudulent credit monopoly and collect on their fictitious debt, and those whores are happy to take their cut, according to Macau. The Snowden NSA spying story has polarised patriots and prostitutes. Henry Macau continues. NBC Madam David Gregory asked Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian why he wasn't a criminal for enabling Edward Snowden. Andy Borowitz wonders if the US government can't see the irony of charging Snowden with spying. A White House petition to pardon Snowden is approaching the 200,000 signature threshold. Obama's popularity has dropped 10% as young supporters recognise that he is a mannequin. Obama said, "If you can't trust your government, then we have a problem." Julian Assange called Obama the real traitor for betraying the hope of a generation of idealists represented by both Bradley Manning and Edward Snowden. Nancy Pelosi was booed by her progressive supporters for saying Snowden broke the law. Polarization between patriots and prostitutes will only increase. Hopefully the knowledge that society has been subverted by an alien, occult, Kabbalist financial power will unite right and left. Hopefully, they will recognise that the US government is initiating terror like 9/11 as a pretext to grab guns and suspend civil rights. Hopefully, left and right will recognise the common enemy is the central banker and their minions. Both Snowden and Greenwald are eloquent spokesmen for freedom. This is not the kind of country I want to live in, Snowden said. Greenwald is defending his source courageously and effectively. I believe they are sincere. Henry Macau further comments, do Snowden's revelations serve the Illuminati agenda, and if so, how? The tell is the publicity, especially in The Guardian and other Rothschild house organs like Democracy Now! There have been many leaks about NSA spying over the years. Why did this one get so much attention? The Illuminati bankers work both sides against the middle. Daniel Ellsberg left is a good example. The bankers got the US into Vietnam and then they attacked US policy while Ellsberg leaked the Pentagon Papers to the New York Times. The Illuminati purpose? Degrade and discredit the US and alienate youth from their...
This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill.
Do not be afraid. We are now in control of what you hear.
1, 2, 3, testing.
A journey to the far reaches of knowledge and the unknown.
I can't believe I just saw that.
From aliens to angels, conspiracies to cover-ups.
One soul and preeminent power.
From extraterrestrials to exposing the truth.
I'll try and explain as much as I can.
You're listening to Planet X.
You're listening to Planet X.
Planet X.
This is Breaking the Matrix. I am Tony Topping.
This is Planet X. Planet X. The radio show that officially does not exist. This is Planet X. Planet X.
A drug-fueled orgy at a Masonic lodge found women dancing naked on stage and men filming sex acts. Police in Michigan have broken up a shocking government. Snowden's unwitting role is to increase alienation, division and polarization in US society as in the 1960s. In other words, they have turned up the heat. Think cooking frogs in a pot. Snowden is a revelation of the method. Big Brother is now official. The masses, in their media-induced stupor, have acquiesced. We've been living in a police state all along, and it hasn't been so bad. The patriots on the left and right have now acquiesced. Visits to conspiracy sites like mine have spiked. The prostitutes have rushed to the government's defence. The battle lines have been drawn. I think the hidden agenda, writes Macau of the Snowden revelations, is to convince people that resistance is futile. We're watching you. Webster Tapley is scathing in his criticism of Snowden and Greenwald. If Snowden were for real, Tapley says, he would have divulged information we didn't already know, like the US role in Syria. He thinks Snowden is a diversion. Apart from a few obvious exaggerations and rhetorical flourishes, Greenwald and Snowden have thus managed to add virtually nothing to our awareness of institutionalized electronic eavesdropping. But the media circus they helped to create emerges in a sinister light when we realize that it was offered as a diversion of world public opinion from the really urgent question on the world historical